And to talk more about this pledge being made by gangs and what this means for gang-infested areas is Kader Jacobs, chairperson of the Mannenberg Community Policing Forum. He's on the line to us from Cape Town. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. As Julian Pillay, my colleague there, was saying, a false sense of security. Has a similar or the same pledge been made in the Western Cape by gangs?
Good evening to the viewers. Yes, indeed, the same pledge has been made, and it is a false sense of security that exists within the community because of COVID-19. Most gangs have decided to play down their activity, but that is really just because of the inability to mobilize. You know, for gang activity to take place, a lot of mobilization needs to take place, and that is restricted because of the lockdown.
So what does it mean just in terms of their day-to-day activities? Are they regrouping, so to speak?
There are two phases to what is happening at the moment. One is there's the black market, and that is the liquor and cigarette sales that's going on at the moment. The illegal sales thereof, I should say. And then the other one is to look at what the lockdown means in terms of gang activity, and then to strategize what happens beyond the lockdown, and even to look at how policing is happening during lockdown. And remember that the gangs are always planning to be one step ahead of the police. And so that is what's happening at the moment.
So it's interesting that you should say that, Mr. Jacobs, that they are one step ahead of the police. So if there is a lull in gang violence since the lockdown, does it necessarily mean that there is no violence?
Certainly on the ground there is no physical violence happening at the moment. I think the opportunity to perpetrate any violence is very difficult. Although in Mannenberg it seems as if though there is very little lockdown, people are moving about in the area as if though nothing is happening within the province. But I don't think the gangs would want to take a chance to carry out any violent activity because of the quick reaction of the police and just the number of police and the army being present most of the time, although not very visible in Mannenberg, I must say.
You spoke about the black market earlier on, and just thinking in terms of, conflict over territory. Last year, in the first 6 months in Mannenberg alone, saw more than 1,000 deaths. So if people are being driven underground to sell their wares, does this make the situation worse?
It does make, because there's a potential for a flare-up, again, territorial flare-up. The sale of liquor and cigarettes doesn't have a specific demarcated area like drugs have. This is new, and that obviously the demand is not in the same space within the community. So it's possible that there could be a flare-up later on when things really get heated up, especially with the lack of available cash within the community. Sales would become a desperate form of acquiring funds.
So just give us a sense of what else goes on behind the scenes. If there is a ceasefire, so to speak, are community members at least enjoying some sort of peace, even if we say it is cosmetic? What are the drug lords, for instance, doing in the background?
Okay, so what has happened, even in Mannenberg, where you have the poorest of the poor people are rallying together to feed the poorest of the poor, as strange as that may sound. There are a number of sites where people are cooking soup, where they're making bread, where they're trying to feed the very poor and the very needy. And that is simply because we believe, from a CPF point of view, that the government hasn't given much thought on the operation to feed people, just the logistics around that. What has also happened is that the gangs have gotten together and have done virtually the same. So they are also feeding people obviously for a different motive. This is to, again, gain the confidence of the community, especially after the lockdown, and also to show that they are a caring group.
And that's a very interesting concept. So these gangsters presenting themselves in a Robin Hood-like manner. But once the lockdown is lifted, does that mean it's life back to normal, back on the dangerous streets of Mannenberg, people being killed with stray bullets, the drug trade continuing with children at primary school being forced to take and sell drugs?
Well, it really depends on what the police strategy is going to be after the lockdown. If we can maintain a similar type of visibility or even a higher visibility after the lockdown, the potential for violence to flare up would be minimized. But most certainly, definitely, there is going to be a flare up. Remember, the cash flow is affected very heavily amongst the gang groupings, and they need to make up for lost time. And that is really going to be hard marketing. And hard marketing could be crossing into turf, and you may see turf wars flaring up.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Kader Jacobs is chairperson of the Mannenberg Community Policing Forum, and all of that around gangs saying that they've declared a temporary ceasefire during the COVID-19